And what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players, an MLS podcast. This week's MLS news is full of topics we never thought we'd be talking about in this lifetime. Peter Vermes finally out from SKC after nearly 2 decades in charge. Then KDB has announced that he will leave Man City at the end of his contract, and we are going to make a case for which team should sign him in MLS. And finally, we're going to have a brief chat about the Philadelphia Union and if the coaching change is the reason that they are as successful as they are, or if it's just the team themselves. I'm Andrew, that's Connor, and this is this week's MLS news. It's been a while since I've had that intro, so I nearly messed it up there, but I got it at the end. Connor, how you doing?
Has it been that long? It's been like what, a week? Didn't we
Well, it's
do
been,
news last
but
week?
I didn't really intro it the proper way last time. We kind of just dove right into it because it was not a lot to talk about. But this is a proper MLS news week. 3 topics, all different teams. We love it.
I know. It's my first proper news week in God knows how long. Months.
Yeah, you know what we're talking about, right? I know it's been a while since you've been back doing this, right? So we're talking about soccer, right? The one where we put the ball on the ground, kick it between the white posts, right?
That's not what I prepared for.
Oh Lord.
Hold on, I gotta change my notes real quick. I thought we were talking about tennis today. I'll be honest
uh
with you. I mean, that's the only
we
reason I'm here. I mean, should I just leave then?
I feel like we should start a tennis podcast. I feel like I have a lot to contribute to the tennis world. I feel like they need my 2 cents.
That would be like the opposite of where we started with this podcast, where I know everything and
Literally.
you know nothing.
That would be so fun. Spin off, put it on there, 9 days a week. We have a tennis episode.
That's gonna be up to 10 days a week now.
Oh man, we have too many ideas and not enough time to do it. But what we do have are some pretty cool scarves. What are you rocking today?
I do not own a KC scarf. I almost said KC Wizards because I've been doing a lot of history stuff lately, so
Nice.
I'm all thrown off with that. But this is actually the club that Mr. Vermes played the most for in his career, at least according to Wikipedia. So I've brought out the Colorado Rapids scarf.
I like
And
that one.
I think I showed this one off at some point, but it is
Mhm.
newer. I got this last December. It's just I haven't been around that much, so I probably haven't worn it much.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, I don't have an SKC one either, but I do have a Kansas City Wizards one. I don't know if I've shown this one to you
That's
yet.
even
This
more
is
fitting.
this is my new KC Wizards scarf with the old school MLS logo in the bottom corner there. Oh, when the Wiz. This is easily a top 5 scarf for me. I love this. I think it's brilliant. The color design is great. The fabric is good. It doesn't meet in the middle, so it gets a minus point, but it's still up there with some of the best. It's very, very nice.
Good. I'm glad you're happy about that.
Yeah, yeah, but
Because I'm not happy about this topic.
it's interesting because I would say, and you know what, Grace doesn't love it either.
Good. I'm glad.
Grace is
Let
up
them
here to
know,
share her
Grace. Talk your
thoughts. Let
talk.
them know. Stand on business, Grace. Well, what I was going to say is that there are a lot of SKC fans who are actually extremely excited with this news, and you are not. Because last week, after Connor adamantly avoided naming Peter Vermes on the hot seat to avoid being seen as silly, he got made to look silly because Peter Vermes left Sporting KC, which for those of you who are not in the know, that's MLS talk for he was sacked. And it ended the longest reign that any manager had over any MLS team in history. In fact, according to Wikipedia, his 15 years and 239 days in charge ended the tenure that was the third longest in the world at that time. And it ranks 40th all time in, which is a very weird stat because Wikipedia set it up funny. Out of all managers after 1946, because why 1946? Who knows? But he is the 40th longest reigning manager of all time. And after all this time, as both a player and a coach, it's kind of tough to determine what exactly SKC is going to be without him. But it would be silly not to acknowledge that they are who they are because of who he is. So I wanted to kind of talk to you first about his legacy and what legacy he leaves behind Sporting KC.
Listen, I mean, I think if you're there that many years, if you give it enough time, the KC fans might come around and start to see his tenure as being a bit better. But I mean, if you look at the numbers, 15 seasons, and he out of the Supporter Shield and MLS Cup, he won one. I mean, that's 30 opportunities for a major trophy in the league, and you did it once. One out of 30. I mean, I know it's not like easy to win these things, but my goodness. I mean, that's not a great, returned. I mean, you could talk about, being consistently good for so many years, but if you're not winning trophies, it's kind of like, how, like, what's your bar for being successful? And I feel like there's a point in time where getting to that consistent level of success is an achievement. But then once you kind of establish that, you got to take the next step and start winning some trophies. And he did win a couple of US Open Cups, which,
Put some
that's not
respect on
nothing.
the U.S. Open Cup, by the
All
way.
right, all
Oh,
right, settle
he only had
down.
two. He had 30 chances to win title. He had lots more than that.
Well, I listen, I said 30 to win either the Supporter Shield or MLS Cup. Okay, because those say what you want about the US Open Cup. Those are bigger than the US Open Cup. And I would sure you would not just all right, don't give me
Get
that
him,
look.
comments. Get him.
Yeah, go ahead. Try and argue that one. So yeah, I mean, I think it was long overdue. It was long overdue to move on. I think we know this, considering, I said this last season, and that was probably still a point where it was long overdue. But yeah, also just a big fuck you to Sporting KC, since, I made this whole prediction last year, the entire year, didn't let him go. And then this week, literally last week, when I decided not to say anything about him being on the hot seat to get fired, that was the time they decided to let him go. So I think that is a clear indication that they are listening to the pod, and I clearly have a lot of sway in the SKC boardroom. So, just I'll put my Venmo in the description of this episode. If KC fans want to start sending me some money and some recommendations on who they want to be the next manager, just let me know, and I will talk about it next podcast episode, and we could start get the ball rolling for who's going to be next in line for you guys.
It's so funny because I think we had a comment on YouTube that was like, "You guys have done it again. You worked it into existence by not talking about it." And I was like, "Yeah, I know. We need to start charging for it." So
We really
he
do.
laughed at it. He was a Casey fan, so he thanked us for our service. But
You're welcome.
you're welcome. You're welcome. Listen, SKC is Peter Vermes as much as Peter Vermes is SKC, right? And you talked about it both as a player and as a coach. What he created, I think, was nothing short of spectacular in terms of that. You don't see that sort of longevity in coaches in American sports usually ever, right? But as an original 10 club, they played one. He played 1 year with the Metro, 2 year for Colorado, and then he joined the Wizards. And then outside of a 3 year stint after he retired from playing, he was there forever, right? He joined as a technical director in '06, and then he took over as the interim in '09, and he never left, right? That's almost 20 full years in an organization, which is insane to think about, right? You think about somebody like everybody likes the Arsene Wenger comparison, right? He had 22 years in Arsenal, right? That's crazy. I think that it's tough to compare the before and after Peter Vermes' coaching tenure because of how much the league has changed, right? He joined the league, or when he joined as a player, there were 8 to 10 teams, right? They were up, they were down, they either won conference titles and cup shield doubles and the most impressive MVP for performance of all time in Tony Meola, or he finishes last in the conference and misses the playoffs the next year. Like it was so up and down. Or in 2002, he finished dead last in the conference and still made the playoffs because MLS. But anyways, his time at SKC was not terrible, right? I think an MLS Cup within his first 4 years, multiple top three Western Conference finishes, 8 straight playoff appearances, 3 U.S. Open Cup trophies. Like that is not something to sneeze at. But then it started to take the turn and the consistency was lacking. And we're going to get into that in a little bit here. But I don't think this might be a bold take. Like, I don't think he goes down as like a top three or top five manager in MLS history.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
100% not.
I don't think he's that close. But I do think it's because of his unceremonious ending. Like if he leaves 3 years ago on top, that's you have this conversation, but he was solid. He was good. He was okay. He was face of SKC for a reason.
Yeah, but you don't do okay for 15 years, you know?
Well, he didn't do okay for 15 years, right? He made it the playoffs 8 straight years, right?
Okay,
And then
but you didn't win anything in the
but he
playoffs.
did.
He won
But
one.
he did. He won the U.S. Open Cup 3 different times.
That's not the playoffs.
Don't have to be. If you're winning
Who said the
trophies,
playoffs?
how are you going to let somebody go who's winning you trophies?
I mean, if you were consistently performing poorly in the league and winning a US Open Cup, I think eventually you would get sacked.
Yeah, maybe. But he's making the playoffs. He's winning trophies. He's won titles. He's finished first in his division. Like he has done things to, and we're going to have this argument here in a little bit about was the timing right? Should they have done it earlier or later? And we can probably transition to that right now because I think everybody was calling for this to be done 2 years ago, and I think we were as well. But I think he saved his job each year because they gave him his last chance, right? Okay, this is your last chance. You had a bad year, but you're a part of the organization. We appreciate you. We know who you are. This is your last chance. We can't do it. And what does he do? He tops the West, right? He goes in, and I think it was between the 2018, yeah, 2018 and 2021, 22 was like he finished first in 2018, 11th out of 13 in 2019, then first again in 2020, third in 2021, then back to 12th in 2022. You don't get rid of somebody who's giving you those sorts of results because again, he took his last chance and he made the most of it, right? He made the most of his last chance, and you can't fire a manager after he wins you the conference. Now, could you have argued, okay, yeah, he had one bad year, we should have let him go halfway through there? Yeah, but let's look at this like run here from 2010 in the conference: third, first, second, fifth, sixth, fifth, first, 11th. It took him until 2019 before he had his first non-top 10 finish in the conference. And even in the league, he never finished lower than 11th until 2019. Like that's not. I don't think that's a track record. That means he should have been gone back before COVID. Now, can you argue he should have been done 2 years ago? Absolutely. But he did make the most of the last couple chances, in my opinion.
I mean, I could hear the argument for it. I'm not gonna like sit here and be like, oh my God, like how could they have kept him for, that whole time period? I mean, if you look at their list of by season, I mean, it's a lot of yellow in there, that's for sure. Like
Yeah.
you're not gonna kick a guy out that's getting a lot of yellow. I can understand that. I mean, I could definitely see a more ambitious team maybe giving him the sack sometime between 2014 and 2017. I know he won two US Open Cups in that time, but league performance was not great. I mean, it looks like they kind of just got into the playoffs all those years and got knocked out in the first round every single time. So, I feel like a team nowadays, like an LAFC type, may not necessarily be okay with results like that. So I think it kind of depends on the team. But I think that's kind of part of the problem that happened with SKC and Vermes was not willing to like make changes. Like when I think of that SKC team, I think of like the same core group of players for the entire time, which I understand. Like you're winning, and definitely during that era, you can get away with keeping those same guys every single year and being successful. And then the league started to change, and you could see that with the turn of like going into the 2020s. And now things are not the same anymore. You can't just keep getting away with throwing the same guys out there every time, especially when at that point they're getting much older and declining and they just seemed so reluctant to make any changes. I mean, that was consistent even with new people they brought in. I mean, like, how long was Alan Pulido there? And he was just constantly being injured and underperforming his DP role. And then eventually it caught up, and the league started to advance much faster than SKC was keeping up because they wouldn't make changes. And then 2020s rolled around and it really started to show. And he was just not. I mean, he was showing that he wasn't capable of keeping up with the changes and making the necessary moves needed to like keep SKC competitive.
Yeah, and I think we're on the same page here. I don't believe that we're sitting here saying that he was out of his mind and a brilliant top guy that the league needed. But I also think that I can't fault them for finishing top 10 in the league every year since his until 2019, right? And then in my opinion, they gave him that, okay, you have one more shot. He finishes in first. Then the next year he finishes in third if we're going to go full table. And then he finishes in fourth, right? So again, you're looking at this, okay, he's getting results out of the group that he has. Then you have the injury bug hit him in 2022. He's okay, not great in 2023. He makes the playoffs. Then 2024, he's back down at the bottom again. I think it looks on paper like he should have gone in the last couple of years, and I can agree with that. He snuck into the playoffs. Like it's not a level that is necessarily ambitious. You wouldn't see new teams doing that now. But I do believe that when you are somebody like Peter Vermes, who has been around so long, your leash is longer. You do have that leeway to say, you know what I can get you, you know who I am, and it's very much like Jim Curtin, I believe, should have had a longer leash in uh, Philly, right? He had one bad year, and you knew what he can give you, and they said no. Is it ambitious, or is it, rewarding what you know you have? And that's an argument that we can have for another day if you'd like. But after three straight seasons without a top 15 finish in the league and a very shady start 2025, which included a letter from the largest supporters group in Kansas City calling for his resignation, then they made the right call. I don't disagree that he should have gone, and I don't think that he do. I think he overstayed his welcome by a year or two? Sure. Do I think he should have gone before COVID? No.
Yeah, I would say I think you've convinced me on that one. I would say I agree with that. I think his time in the 2010s, SKC was pretty like consistently strong. I would say probably outside of that one era, those couple of like 4 years. But even during that time, I think winning those couple of U.S. Open Cups is what kept him in the job there. I think if he doesn't win those cups, he's probably gone in that 4 year window where you're kind of just barely sneaking into the playoffs and then getting knocked out immediately in the first round. But um, I would agree. I would think he was probably on the cusp around then. And then, like you said, had those 2 years in 2018 and 2020 where they finished high up in the West. Well, they finished top of the West and high up in the Supporter Shield, and that probably kept him around for at least that extra couple of years. But yeah, no, they should have let him go earlier on, probably in 2022. I understand there were injuries and all that stuff, and that's maybe why they gave him a little bit more time. But
Right.
I think, and this is something for ownership. It's not necessarily something for coaches, but I think they have to figure out when's the right time to kind of move on and change things up. And it's a hard thing to do. And clearly, like there's teams that make mistakes with it. Like, Chicago does it with players often. It's clear that SKC is doing it with players and coaches. Um, and it's funny, you mentioned Wenger. You did that comparison as you mentioned it. I was literally pulling him up because I was like, that's a good comparison of like someone who, at least according to a lot of like fans and all that, felt like kind of overstayed their welcome. But I feel like Wenger's a completely different story because he won so much for that team. Like he was insanely successful for them. And I think Vermes was successful for SKC too, but not nearly to the level of Wenger. So
Yes, I want to make it clear. I'm not comparing Peter
no,
Vermes
no, no,
as
of
the
course.
Arsene
I didn't think
Wenger
you
of
were
MLS.
either.
Like
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that is not. He was never at that level. However, I was just using that as a longevity comparison for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Um, the For me again, it's less about. I think that he got a longer leash than he should have, but I believe it was earned. Is kind of where I'm trying to go with this. Is should he have been gone 2 years ago? Yes, but he earned having that longer leash. He's shown what he can do. He had a couple of things pop up, and unlike in Philly, the front office of SKC was understanding enough to say, okay, I'm going to give you one more shot. And when he got that one more shot, he provided for it, right? And then in the last 2 years, it didn't quite come to fruition. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. But I do want to ask because at the end of the day, he's gone. There's no amount of podcasting that we can do to bring him back, at least to SKC. Montreal is a different story. Um, but what's next, right? What is SKC without Vermes? What do they need?
I mean, I think the team itself needs to rebuild. I mean, it's just me personally. I don't think that the team is exactly in great shape. Like this isn't an LAFC team that's being held back by a coach. I mean, I think they need to change things up. They need to finally kind of just settle in and make the decision that they're going to like I think this should be the Kickstarter for it. Like now's your chance to kind of like fully dive into a full rebuild of the coach, the players, because there's just too much continuity on this team for the results that they've been getting in the last few years. I think it's time to kind of I think they did a bit of that over the last couple of years. I think they started to finally kind of move on from the old guard and bring in some new people, but I still think there's plenty more room to go in that regard. Um, so I think it's just like you take this year, you start to kind of clear out the bad contracts, and you look to start rebuilding. Maybe a little bit in the summer, but I think the big rebuild comes in the winter of next year. But I don't, me personally, I don't think the roster's in the shape where you can bring in another manager and still push to get something out of this season. I feel like you kind of just have to maybe just take this season on the chin and just try to rebuild for the next one and come back in better shape.
So let me push you on that a little bit more because I am looking more for what's next in terms of a coach. So let's assume that they get their roster up to wherever they need it to be. What are they looking for in the next coach? Are they looking for somebody who's a bit more flexible with the way that he plays? They're looking for somebody who, what do they need to look for is kind of what I'm going for here. Because yeah, the roster is what it is, right? And you can easily point to that as something that is the precipice of why he wasn't succeeding. Granted, I believe he had a really big hand in making that roster, considering his double role. And I'm actually interested. I don't actually know if I read this, if he got let go of both roles or if he's still within the club. I need to double check that. But anyways, what are we looking for here?
I it's hard to say because they haven't been in a coach search in 15 or 16 years, so it's there's not exactly like a track record to base it off of here to be like, oh, this, like this is typically what they've looked for in a coach. Obviously, there's plenty of really good coaches that are available. I think majority of them are not going to come to the U.S. to play for SKC, or sorry, to coach for SKC. But I feel like they're going to go and kind of play it safe and go with someone who's got experience in the league. A similar move to like what Toronto did, bringing in Robin Fraser. I'd have to look into the names to think of somebody who would kind of fit that bill. But SKC just doesn't strike me as a team that's very like adventurous and risky and is going to just kind of like throw out, bring in like a Nuri Sahin. I probably butchered that name so bad, but you know who
No,
I'm
that was
talking
good.
about, the one from
Yeah, yeah,
Dortmund,
from
right?
Dortmund.
Like a young
Another
manager
club
who's kind of,
legend.
huh?
Another club legend.
Yeah,
Somebody,
another club.
somebody, somebody call Matt Beasler up.
I honestly, I could see, I can. That might be a possibility. I know you
Isn't that
joke about
funny?
that, but
You see Graham Zusi and Roger Espinoza running the touchline.
yeah, Tim Mealy is the goalkeeper coach. Just run it back. Honestly, no, that's a good mention. I mean, that could be possible. I still think they go with the experience hire, but if they did that, I wouldn't be shocked.
Um, Here's what I'll tell you. Also, I'm just looking up really quick. Matt Beasler is a club director for Captain Soccer Club, a new youth soccer club based in Kansas City. So I don't know if he has his coaching licenses, which you
I
need
should
to
pay the fine.
be in there. Yeah, right. But that'd be funny. Um, Listen, you were absolutely right. They have not gone through a search in 16 years, and it's not something they used to do continually, right? I believe that they have had four permanent managers in their time in MLS, which is what the amount that Chelsea usually go through in a season, give or take, something like that.
Was that
Um,
necessary?
it
Was it? Was
absolutely
it?
was. You know for sure it was necessary. Here's the length of time that those managers have lasted. Their shortest, 845 days, almost 1,200 days the next shortest, over 2,600 days the next one, and then Peter Vermes at 500 or 5,620 days. Right? This isn't a team that's going to be like, oh, let's just bring in whoever we want and then let them jump ship. Like they want somebody who's going to be there, build culture, and continue to grow this club. So you know where I'm going. Who
Oh
else?
no,
Who else has had a ton of time at a club building culture and building a lot out of nothing to get them back to the powerhouse? Yeah,
no,
if CF Montreal isn't going to do it, Jim Curtin's phone better be ringing
no,
off the hook
no,
for Sporting
no,
Kansas City. He lasted
no.
4,000 days of Philly in two managerless clubs. He's the much better fit in KC. They're going to give him money. They've got a better infrastructure. They've got a better youth pipeline. Everything is much better there than it would be in Montreal. And I can see him if he wants to take the job, they'll give it to him for a long time. That being said, I don't think that it's actually going to happen, but I do. That's the sort of mold that I'm looking for. Somebody who's going to be there a long time, go through the highs and lows, get them immediate success, and hold them there. But I don't think, like you mentioned, I don't think it's going to be some big name hotshot from Europe who's going to use SKC as again, I use Eric Ramsey again as this thing like oh, I'm a young upstart out of Man United. I'm going to apply for it, and then after I play for, after I do well in 3, 4 seasons, I'm going to jump ship back to Europe. I don't think that's the thing. I think they're going to stay local, and they're going to go from there.
You know who I could see as a shout here?
Jim Curtin.
No, absolutely not. Bob Bradley.
Ooh, okay. I like that.
He's available right now.
He is.
Obviously, extremely experienced in the league, very successful in the league as well. And I feel like just fits the SKC mold very well. Of like, I just feel like he could get a good amount out of an SKC type team.
I like that. That might be the greatest thing you have actually added to this podcast ever.
Ever?
So,
Is the
ever.
bar that low?
Oh, let's be real here. You know the bar's that low.
Are we deadlifting? Is the bar that low?
Nice. No, listen, I think it's a really good shot. I'd love to see him come back here. Again, there are clubs in MLS that you don't want to see do the whole manager recycle thing, right? And we talk about that a lot, whether it's good or bad. SKC absolutely feels like one of those teams that needs to have somebody who knows what this league's about so they can come in, get success early, and build off of it. So I like that
Yeah.
shout. I think I
I
think I'd take Jim Curtin over Bob Bradley though, personally.
well, I could say like in terms of the recycle, those are two guys that kind of are an exception to that rule. You know,
Fair, totally
you
fair.
recycle Bob Bradley and Jim Curtin as much as you want. Like those guys have earned the right to be recycled. You don't recycle a guy like Neville or quite frankly, no offense, but Robin Fraser either.
Man,
Not with the
maybe
track records.
maybe we need to give you time off more frequently because these are some great shouts that you're giving. Josh Wolf is
I've been
around.
studying. I've been
Yeah,
studying.
you have. You took 2.5 months off just so you could study who's going to come in and
I mean,
replace Peter
nobody said
Vermes.
it. Everybody was like, "Oh, where's Connor?" Nobody ever said the library, studying up, hitting the books. No, instead I was begging on the streets, right, Eli? Don't think I don't remember.
It's hilarious. Oh, it's too funny. Yeah, there aren't a ton of American managers that have been in here. You got Jim Curtin, Josh Wolf, Hackenworth, who was just at St. Louis, Valentino, who I think is a little bit outside the expectation right now. Mike Peckey's still available. King Mike, please come back and coach. I need more of your hot takes. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. You got Bob Bradley, who you mentioned, and that's pretty much it. A couple of USL managers that could do a job, but um, no, I really like that shot. That's really solid. But we need to move on because we could sit here and pander over it, but we all know at the end of the day, it's not gonna be us who decides, right? So we should then talk about the one thing we can decide, and that's where is Kevin De Bruyne going? As you know, our podcast has complete authority over that decision. Um, so just a background, right? For those of you who may not know, Kevin De Bruyne, you may have known or heard of him referred to as the Belgian Tyler Adams. He's leaving Man City, and probably because they're about to get deducted 500 points and relegated to the ninth division, and he doesn't want to deal with any of that nonsense. But for their entire run into the first season, it was rumored that San Diego was in conversations to have him join as their third DP. But Tommy Scoops has reported they're out on the running for him, and they've actually given up the rights to another MLS team. However, he did not name them, which means it is time to play our favorite game, make the case for a random team to get their new DP midfielder, which is a game we play often, as you know, our longtime listeners of the show. And I'll just give a little background here because you're not getting him on a TAM deal. I hate to break it to you. You're going to have to pay him as a DP. So that narrows down the list of teams dramatically. You've got
So
pure
not
D
not Miami is what you're telling me. They're not going to be able to get him on a TAM deal
and
and slip some
magically,
money in Don's
magically,
pocket.
magically, magically, it's going to be announced in about 3 days that we're going to have 4 DP slots. um,
Yeah, exactly.
so there are teams that have straight up designated player slots available. That is RSL, Red Bull, New York City because Tyus Magno's on loan and he's off the roster. Columbus, DC, and Montreal. A few clubs can also buy down players to open those spots. Houston, Philly, and Minnesota. Do you see one of these teams making a play?
I mean, I think there's an obvious link there if we're talking about it.
And it's CF Montreal because we know how much they love to spend on their designated players. Very good.
This is why they were waiting. They were waiting for a moment like this. Honestly, it was we were playing checkers, they were playing chess.
Listen, some people wait a lifetime for a moment like this. They just waited 15 years.
Yeah.
That
I
was good.
mean, wait for your opportunity. No, in all seriousness, I think the obvious link here is NYCFC, as you mentioned. There's the Man City NYC link. De Bruyne has been at Man City for so many years. Would not surprise me if he stays within the organization still. And, for what he gave to the Man City team, I wouldn't be surprised if the City group likes to reward him and, give him a good send off and bring him down to NYC, pay him a boatload of money. He can kind of just do his thing and not really like stress too much about it. And I mean, it wouldn't be the first time we've seen something sim like NYC kind of using Man City connections to bring people in. Um, this it's kind of like the Frank Lampard path. He went to, I mean, a little bit different, obviously, considering all the circumstances, but still going from City to NYC to kind of wind down the career. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's the most likely situation. So that's probably what I'm thinking is the most likely out of all those. Do I think it's the most fun? No, but I think it's most likely.
I completely agree with you. I think it's right there in your face, right? Here is the Man City New York City. This is what New York City linked up with Man City for. Like this is the move that you would get, not mixed disc over to New York or to Man City and then loaned out 15 times, even though for some reason some of our co-hosts think that's actually a legit thing. But anyways,
That's not what I
you
said.
you also have the new stadium coming in to draw him over, right? Listen, you're not going to play on a baseball stadium forever. We got this nice, bright, shiny new thing. It's New York City. They've had that center mid designated player, Lampard, Pirlo's of the world, whatever. Um, he'd be a good mentor to the young players, right? Carrizo and Shore would learn under him. That'd be insane. They have a ton of attacking talent out wide, but nobody really sets them up outside of Maxi Morales. I think, like I mentioned, they have to get Magno off permanently to open it, but he made it clear last week that he wants to leave and stay in Brazil. So if you, I don't think they're going to have a problem letting Magno go if they can replace him with Kevin De Bruyne, right? I have a very sneaky pick here, and I feel super big brained about this.
Oh
So
boy.
you are not allowed to tell me anything wrong about this. You can only praise it.
Uh, don't be so sure.
My sneaky pick, and this is gonna be the episode clip too, by the way.
Ooh.
Kevin De Bruyne to DC United. They've never been shy about bringing in the big name, right? Remember when Wayne Rooney was like, "Oh yeah, Wayne Rooney's going to come to DC." Guess what? He did. Remember back when they were in for Mesut Ozil? They're not afraid being linked to these big name center mids, right? This would not be out of the norm for them to get a big name creative midfielder. And then you look at the connections. His national team teammate Christian Benteke over there saying, "Yeah, come on, get the Belgian connection right there. Washington D.C. is a wonderful place with all the historical sites. It's like that. What you're. It's not. Oh, how am I going to get around this without insulting some people? It's not Topeka, Kansas. There you go. I'm not,
Wow.
I'm
Get
not
him,
pissing
Topeka,
anybody
Kansas.
off.
Get him.
This is a place where he can go and really enjoy the sights. His family can enjoy living there. He can travel to different areas relatively easily and see the United States for what it is. Also, I need to live in a world where USL legend Troy Lesesne is coaching the world's greatest box-to-box midfielder. I just need it in my life. If it's not in my life, I don't know what I'm doing. But listen, I'm not a betting guy, but I'm surprised I haven't heard this link more. Like, I feel like this is one that makes sense for DC to be linked to. I'm not necessarily them getting it done, but it feels like something they would be linked to, right? I feel like they're always in for one really crazy big name every couple of years. Wayne Rooney, Mesut Ozil type of vibe. And here comes Kevin De Bruyne on the seat, and we know San Diego's out.
I mean, I'm flipping through the list of teams again, and I really like NYC is really the only place that I feel like makes the most sense to me. I mean, I was gonna I was gonna ask you the question of if you're Kev De Bruyne, why would you go to DC United? But
And then explain it
I
to you.
forget about the Benteke link. I mean,
Oh
I think
yeah.
that's probably fair.
Well, and that's what drew me to it. Because I'm sitting here thinking, okay, yeah, DC's out. They don't spend on anybody. Oh, wait a second, Christian Benteke can bring him over, right?
Well, that depends on how close they are too. I mean, yeah, maybe they played in the national team together, but doesn't mean that they're necessarily buddies.
Well, I'm sure he'd rather go with somebody he's relatively familiar with than going to New York City and not knowing anybody and playing on a baseball field for a year before he has to play in the nice stadium, or 2 years if he even makes it that long, right? I don't think RBNY is going to do it. I think they've been linked to Timo Werner and Thomas Mueller, kind of like the more German-based DPs.
Yeah.
Columbus feels like a long shot. I just
Yeah.
don't know.
That's not
It's
really
weird.
their MO either.
Right. And that's kind of why I'm like, it doesn't feel like they go for the big flashy guys. They get really solid DPs, but they're not out of
Yeah.
the,
They don't
the,
really get
the,
they don't get the aging guys either. They're kind of like they
exactly.
grab guys in their prime usually.
Right. Right. Montreal. Let's skip
Yeah,
Montreal.
they just don't buy anybody, so it's
Yeah.
definitely not Montreal.
RSL, I think, is going to use it on a nine, so they're not going to get De Bruyne, and they've already got Goncalves in there. And I don't
Yeah.
see Houston, Philly, or Minnesota doing the whole, or especially not Philly, but I don't see any of them doing the whole. I'm going to buy down one of the DPs we have and then bring this guy in. I just don't see them doing all that work for somebody. And again, I don't know if he would enjoy playing there. Like, I don't know if they'd be able to get that done, you know?
Yeah.
So those are the two that I think stand out the most for me.
Yeah, I would say so too. I would agree. I think it's between NYC and DC. I think my favorite on that one is probably NYC, in my
Mhm.
opinion.
I
I'm
think that's
surprised San
easy.
Diego's out though. I really thought he would have been a good fit there.
It sounds like he didn't fit their mold. They were trying to go with younger, more, dynamic DPs, I guess. That's kind of the vibe that I got. While he would have been great for ticket sales and stuff like that, they want somebody who can perform, plain and
True.
simple.
They also
So,
don't have a designated player spot open for
yeah,
him
and
right
I
now
noticed that
either.
they went to the two DP model, which is strange. 'Cause I thought they were 3-3, but I must have been wrong there.
Yeah, I mean, if they're going along the way that you were talking about, then it makes sense that they went with the 2 and 4.
Right, right. Which, yeah, exactly. So let us know where you think he is going to go. Leave your comments here and tell us if you think that he's going to uh, New York City, DC, or if CF Montreal are about to break the bank. And if you are, seek help because that you are in need of some psychological evaluation. But anyways, we have one more topic here to talk about. It's a Philadelphia Union, and the reason they're in the chat is not just because they're doing well, but because Ernst Tanner is out here celebrating earlier than anybody in the world has ever celebrated. Because he has come out and said that it's very clear that they made the right move moving on from Jim Curtin. You could see it in the results. Look at the way we're playing, all this good stuff. And fans in the comments all over the place are like, calm down, buddy. Like we're 6 games into the season. This is not the first time we've been here and then crumbled and fallen. Let's wait till we get to the end of the year. Some are cautiously optimistic they may be right. Others are claiming that it's less about the coaching change and more about the players that are actually having time to gel and play. What are your thoughts? Are they good because Carnell made them good, or could Jim Curtin have done this too?
I hate to go with the cop out pick here, but I do think that it's a little bit of both. I think,
Straddle that fence, baby.
yeah, it's what I do best. Um, I think that clearly, like the roster hasn't changed a ton, right? Like they lost Carranza, but Ty Barbo stepped in, seamlessly filled those shoes, at least so far. So it's not like the roster has had this huge turnover, and it's a completely new set of guys that are coming in and getting results done. Like this is still the same team that was consistently towards the top of the East and just very competitive. So it's not like crazy surprising. I think there were, we talked about it at the end of last season about, some reasons why Philly might have struggled last year. And I don't think it was Jim Curtin. I still think Jim Curtin's a really good coach. Definitely deserves a chance somewhere else in the league. We'll probably wait for the right opportunity for him because, I think he can.
Like Kansas City.
Um, no, I also think like the wins, a few of the wins they've had this year have been against a little bit of weaker opponents. Some good wins in there. Don't get me wrong. They beat St. Louis. St. Louis has been a good team, but you've got wins. They beat FCC handily too. But there are other wins coming against Montreal, New England, Orlando. Teams that are not doing that well. So I would be in the same situation with the Philly fans as well. I would be cautiously optimistic with the start of the season, but definitely still very cautious because there's a lot of season left to play. There's going to be tougher games coming up. Um, and honestly, they're riding a very hot Ty Baraba right now. And if he cools down, who knows what's going to happen? They haven't exactly been the best defensively this season. They've had a couple clean sheets, but when they concede, they seem to concede in bunches.
Well, and that's exactly what I was going with is, yeah, it's nice that you're doing well, but Montreal, New England, St. Louis on a red card, and an Orlando and Cincy game that I think, they did well, but you're right. They rode Ty Barabo back-to-back hat tricks or back-to-back or 5 goals in those 2 games. Like that's not normal production. Now, can you also say that okay, that comes from the coaching change? You could. But here's what I'll tell you. I think it is very early because it's 6 games, right? You can't hang your hat on a trend over 6 games. Philly last year, 15 games in the season, basically halfway through, were 2 wins out of a top four spot. 1 win out of like comfortably in the playoffs. Then they sold all their best players and forced Jim Curtin to play with nothing. And now here we are 6 games in. If they slip up for just 2 games, they're down to 12th. Like yes, it's on paper you look great, but you're right. You're riding a hot hand of a very hot striker, and it's so early. Like the season is so brand new. You can't just step up and call it a massive dub and look at me, I'm the smartest guy. And I know that's not what he was trying to come out and say, but I'm sure somebody asked about it. He's backing his manager. I appreciate that as somebody who seemed to not necessarily back Jim Curtin all the time, which is relatively interesting. Um, However, a little fence straddling myself here, I'm not sure Jim Curtin does this. He did a lot with a little, and he is a very good coach. I agree with you, but he also was very reluctant to change his style of play. And that's his right as a coach, right? He's got a style, he knows how to coach it, he knows the players he needs for it, and he wants to stick with it. And the front office wanted to go in a different direction, and Cornell said, let's go, all fair, right? No problem. But I do believe that Philly are the ones, are who they are because of this change, right? They're living on the edge of that change. You've seen these losses already, and they lose handily, but they're benefiting from it as well. If you look at their stats, they've increased their total tackles, their tackles in the attacking third significantly per game. They're leading to more chances and goals, having less of the ball, all this stuff that's very Red Bull-esque. And Maribo's benefiting from that. He's scoring in bunches, but he did also score in bunches under Jin, but just less consistency, right? While Jin is a brilliant manager, it seems that this is one, the new manager bump, everybody trying to play to impress the new boss. But also, I think that the system that he changed to is significantly improving their style of play for the players that they have. Right? They've gotten rid of Jack McGlynn. That was a huge piece because he played the way Jim wanted to play. Cornell didn't need somebody to be clever and drop into the midfield and create chances. He wants to win the ball high up the field. So they get rid of him. They give him what he needs to be successful, and here you are. Can they turn it into long-term and playoff success? I don't know. But right now, I can see him saying, yes, this where we are is because of Cornell and the change that we made. That's great. But to celebrate that it was the right decision, I think is a stretch.
Yeah. I mean, we saw what Cornell could bring to the table with St. Louis. Like it was
And Red Bull.
ton, yeah, but mainly St. Louis. A ton of success early on, and then I think teams kind of figured it out a bit, and you saw the step down.
Mm-hmm.
So I do feel like it's definitely still too early to be kind of giving that seal of approval. We made the right decision.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's kind of again, it's not a super in-depth conversation because I think a lot of people are on the same page. I don't think anybody's stepping up and like Ernst Tanner build the statue, right? He made this great change. We're gonna win everything for the next 10 years. But they're also not upset, right? It's not like he's coming out when they're sitting bottom of the table being like, nope, this is the right decision. Just trust the process, right?
Hmm.
He's got the results to make this comment. The problem is, I think everybody feels just a little too early to say that.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. Well, like I said, that is it for us from the designated players on this week's MLS news. Make sure you leave your comments on online wherever you are, whether you're watching on YouTube, in the Buzzsprout, on the audio, online and Twitter and all the other spaces. Let us know what you're thinking because this is the best part about it is connecting with you. We hope you enjoy this episode. Make sure you stick around because we are bringing back MLS history. We're bringing back games. We're bringing back a ton of content. So please, please, please make sure you subscribe. Tell all your friends to do that. Grace is coming up to tell you right now. Subscribe. Follow us. But yes, we hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. See ya.